Jammal'an and Ogom is the 5th boss of the Sunken Temple raid from Phase 3 of Season of Discovery. There's 2 different ways this fight can play out, and that's going to depend on which boss is damageable at the first phase of the fight. One of the bosses receives a buff that gives it constant healing at the start of the fight. You're going to have to figure out which boss you need to take down and burn that boss down. In Phase 1, Ogom really only has one ability, and that's Agonizing Weakness. He's going to put a curse on multiple party members that takes damage over time. Any druids or mages should spend their time removing this curse to make sure everybody's nice and safe. In Phase 1, Jammal'an is going to do a smite attack that is interruptible. He's going to do a Holy Nova effect on the ground. This will create little pockets of areas that will burst out holy damage that you need to stay away from. He's also going to cast Holy Fire on 5 random targets. This needs to be dispelled quickly. It does a lot of damage. Overall, Phase 1 is relatively easy. Each of your tanks picks up one of the 2 targets. You separate them from each other because one is immune to damage and one is not. And you burn down the one that needs to be targeted, keeping out of those Holy Novas. Once one of the 2 dies, the other one is going to rush to it and consume it. They will then become an empowered version of themselves. Jammal'an is going to become the Prophet. He's going to continue putting out those Holy Nova effects, but he gains some additional abilities. First off, he'll do a Psychic Scream. This will be a short cast that then fears all targets within 15 yards. When Psychic Scream begins, all tanks and melee need to move away from him to make sure they don't get feared. The fear will run you through those Holy Nova zones and deal a lot of damage. Next up, he's going to put a bunch of Shadow Sermon pains on the group. These need to be dispelled by anybody that can remove magic as quickly as possible, as this is the major damage point of this fight. He'll do an AoE penance that will hit everybody in the raid for 500 damage every second for 3 seconds. This needs some major burst healing from your healers to keep everybody alive through. And finally, occasionally he's going to put a Power Word shield on himself. This needs to be purged off as quickly as possible by a shaman or a priest. If Ogom is your target in Phase 2, he instead becomes a paladin. He's going to gain Consecration, which deals massive damage to anybody inside it on the ground. He's going to cast Divine Storm, which pulls the entire raid on top of him and then does an AoE of damage. He's going to cast AoE Hammer of Justice, which stuns most of your raid for 6 seconds. And he's going to stack a holy damage debuff on his current tank that will increase holy damage taken. Overall, the strategy with Ogom is to keep him moving. Every time he drops a Consecrate, you need to get him out of it as quickly as possible. That way, when he casts Divine Storm or when he casts Hammer of Justice, nobody's stunned or pulled into that Consecrate's damage. You also need to tank swap this guy, making sure each tank doesn't get too many stacks of the Holy Strike debuff. Ogom is probably the easier of the 2 to deal with. I think Jammal'an, if he gets into Phase 2, is quite a bit more difficult. You need to have that purge to be able to get off. There's quite a bit more damage pulsing out with those penances as well as the Shadow Word Pains. It's just a tougher encounter. Regardless of which one you get, this guide should have helped you figure out how to take that guy down nice and easy. I'm Zesty Fresh with Zaza Games, and we'll catch you guys next time.